is tomorrow.
Oh, Max, tomorrow?
Yes.
Is it going to be easy tomorrow?
It's going to be this chapter.
Oh, okay.
Huh? Yep. All right, guys, so problems 1 through 6. Yes, sir. Then you'll take it the next day.
We're going to take it Friday, because let's make it big.
All right, guys, so problems 1 through 6. Is there one of those in particular that y'all want to look at?
Number 1.
So when we look at number 1, we want to find the indicated length AD. We want to find the length from A to D. Now we do know that 3x plus 4 and 6x minus 2 are the same, so we can set those equal to each other to solve for the value of x. And once we find the value of x, we can plug it back in. So we have 3x plus 4 is equal to 6x minus 2. So the first thing we can do is subtract 3x from both sides to get the variables onto the same side. And 3x minus 3x would be 0, leaving us with 4. 6x minus 3x would be 3x minus 2. What we can do next is we can add 2 to both sides. And when we add 2 to both sides, we get that 6 is equal to 3x. And last but not least, we can divide both sides by 3. So x is equal to 2. And now that we have the value of x, we need to plug it back into one of the equations. It doesn't matter which. So we could say 3 times 2 plus 4. Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 plus 4 is 10. If we plugged it into the other equation, 6 times 2 minus 2, well, 6 times 2 is 12, and 12 minus 2 is 10. So for both of these lengths here, it's going to give us 10 and 10, and the length from A to D would be 10. So the answer for this here is 10. Now I would be making sure, especially reading and determining what length it's actually asking for, that it's not asking just for this length here, or if it's asking for the whole, because there is a difference. Because if it wanted AC, it would be 20. We would add 10 and 10 together. Any other questions on 1 or 2? Any questions on 3 or 4? BC and CD are the same, yes? So what is BC? Yes, sir.
If you were doing number 3, would you set those equal to each other?
Yes. Any other questions on 3 and 4? Questions on 5 or 6? So given this setup here, we know that these two equations are going to be equal to each other. So we're going to set them equal to each other, solve for the value of x, and then plug back in to find ij. So the first thing we can do is to get x, all the variables on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. 4x minus 2x is 2x. Number 6. Now the next thing we can do is add 4 to both sides, telling us that 2x is equal to 32. At this point here, we can divide both sides by 2, telling us x is equal to 16. If you got it from that stack, you don't need it. Okay, then yes. Now, when we plug it back in, we could say 2 times 16 plus 28. Well, 2 times 16 is, and 32 plus 28 is 60. So the length of, I think I wanted ij, is 60. And one way that we can double check our answer to make sure we got the correct answer is by plugging it into both, 4x minus 4. Because if we do 4 times 16 minus 4 and we also get 60, then we have the correct answer. So they both give us 60. Because when we get the correct value of x and plug it into both, we will get the same answer. Any questions on 5 or 6? Questions on 7 or 8? Because what would we do with 7 and 8? Same thing. We set them equal to each other, solve for the value of x, and then plug it back in. Questions on 9 or 10? Number 9. Because we're talking about the circumcenter, the distance from the point, our centroid, or our circumcenter, to the angles are going to be the same. Sorry, not that. Got them mixed up. It would actually be these here. Really, we can set these two equations equal to each other. So our 2x is going to equal x plus 21. So x is equal to, and then we need to plug it back in. 2 times 21 is 42. Or we could say that 21 plus 21 is 42. So the length of PB is 42. So again, we're still setting them equal to each other, solving for the value of x and plugging it back in. Any questions on this here? Questions on number 10? Questions on number 10? We good with number 10? Questions on 11 or 12? Questions on how to do problems 11 or 12? Well, what are we going to do with both of these here? We're going to set the two equations equal to each other, solve for the value of x, and then plug it back in. Let's look at number 13. 13 are our congruent segments. So here, we're given that C, B, and D are really the midpoints. These are our midpoints, and we're connecting them by our mid-segments. So CD is a mid-segment, BD is a mid-segment, and CB is a mid-segment. Now what that also tells us is that AE, the third side, is actually parallel to its mid-segment. So it'd be parallel to BD or DB. These two links would be parallel. We also would have that CD is going to be parallel to what? AF, its third side. And lastly, we would have that CB would be parallel to EF. Now, because each one of these is a midpoint, it's going to cut each of these sides in half. They're going to be two congruent parts. And they're actually going to be congruent to their midsegment. Because the midsegment is equal to half the distance, or half the length of the third side. Well, if the midpoint's the middle, it's going to cut it in half. So those three would be the same. So when we look at this here, AC would actually be congruent to CE or EC, either one, as well as BD. We can also say that CD is congruent to AB and BF. And lastly, CB would be congruent to ED and DF, yes. And that's it. Any questions on number 13? Yes, sir.
Like, how do you separate the two?
Well, these two are congruent because this is the and BD is its midsegment, which is half the length of the entire side. Well, half the length is this, so those three are the same. That's true for the other two sides as well. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Questions on 14, 15, or 16? So we want to find BC and CE. Well, BC is a midsegment and is equal to half the length of the third side. Well, the third side is? So this length is 14. So we can say that BC is equal to 14. Now we want to find CE. Well, AC and CE are congruent. They're the same. So we'll set them equal to each other. So we're going to have that 6x minus 20 is equal to 3x minus 4. We need to solve for the value of x and then plug back in. So the first thing that we could do is subtract 3x from both sides. Here the 3x and 3x would cancel. Here 6x minus 3x is 3x. Minus 20 is equal to negative 4. The next thing we can do is add 20 to both sides. When we add 20 to both sides, we get that 3x is equal to 16. And last but not least, we can divide by 3, which tells us that x is equal to, well, 16 thirds. Because we still need to plug it back in. And when we plug it back in, so we could pick either one, 3 times 16 thirds minus 20. Well, this is going to give us 16 minus 20, which is negative 4. Yep. And if we try it in the other one, 3 times 16 thirds minus 4. Oh, no wonder. I was wondering why that didn't work out. Because that's not 3 minus, it's 6. Something seemed wrong. Yep. Because this would be 2, and this ends up being 32 minus 20, which is 12. And if we did the other one, 3 times 16/3 minus 4, well, here the 3 and 3 would cancel, giving us 16 minus 4, which is 12. So our length that we wanted for CE is 12. Any other questions on this here? And at this point here, we could really, well, we didn't scroll down. When we plug it back in for the 6 times 16/3 minus 20, you could type that into the calculator and it would give you the answer. Any other questions on 14 or 15? Questions on 16? Okay, 16, if we went and did it, we would set each one of these sets equal to each other, solve for z, x, and y, plug back in to find the lengths. Well, we can look at both 17 and 18. We can look at 18 first. 18 tells me that the length of CE is 16. Now, is CE the smaller, bigger, or the whole? The bigger. And the bigger is equal to twice the smaller, and the smaller is equal to half of the bigger. So if the bigger is 16, the smaller would be 8. So BC is 8, and CE, the whole thing, would be 24. Now let's see what the other one gave us if there's no other questions on 18. Now it told us that FC is 20. Well, FC is the whole. Sorry, BE. BE is 24. The whole thing. Thank you. BE is 24. Now when we look at 17, it tells us that the entire length is 20. Now we need to find the bigger or smaller. Now if we wanted to find the smaller section is going to equal 1/3 of the whole. So to find the smaller section, we're really dividing 20 by 3. And if we divide 20 by 3, we'll get 6 2/3. And the bigger is twice the smaller. So if we have the smaller section, we can multiply it by 2 and get the bigger. So if we wanted to, we could do 6 2/3 times 2 in the calculator, which would give us 13 1/3. And again, the smaller and bigger sections will still add together to give me the whole. Any questions on 17 or 18? You good? Questions on 19? We good with 19? Okay. Questions on 20 through 26? So which one would be bigger? Because 68 is the bigger angle, so the side opposite would be bigger. Well, which angle is bigger? And the side opposite is AC, so it would be bigger. Any other questions on these with the angles? Let's look at number 27. which side is bigger? $25, and its opposite angle. So angle E would be bigger. Because the bigger angle is opposite the bigger side, and the bigger side is opposite the bigger angle. Here, the bigger angle would be A, because it's opposite the bigger side, which is 16. Yes. Any other questions on 29 through, I think, 30? We good with these here? Okay. Question 31 through 33, list the angles from biggest to smallest. 31, 32, or 33, which one do we want to look at?
32.
So we can look at 32 or 33, then 32. So when we look at this here, which is the biggest side?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong section.
You're good. 25, which would make angle I the biggest. What's the next biggest side? 24, which is opposite H, and then the last one would be A. So I, H, A. Let's look at 32. Which side is the biggest? 5, which would make angle F the biggest angle. Then the next would be G, because it's opposite side length of 4, which leaves us with angle E. And that's it. Any other questions on 31, 32, or 33? List the side lengths from biggest to smallest. Any one of these three in particular that y'all want to look at? So 36. Now, do we have all three angles? No. But we do know that any three angles in a triangle add up to B. So we can do this in a calculator, do 90 plus 24, which will tell us that this is, and we can subtract it from 80, which would give us 66 degrees. Now we know that this angle is 90. So 90 is opposite, which would be the biggest side, because 90 would be the biggest angle. The next biggest angle would be 66, and it's opposite. And lastly, we would have BK. Any questions on this here? So really for these here, we just need to find the third angle and then order it from biggest to smallest. Any questions on these three here? Questions on 37, 38, or 39? Which one do you all want to look at? 37? So for a triangle, any two lengths added together will always be greater than the third. That works for any triangle. So if we want to find the third length, well, we know that 8 plus 15 is going to be greater than whatever that third side length is. We can also have that 8 plus x is greater than 15. And we can also have that 15 plus x is greater than 8. Which one of these three statements really won't tell us anything? 15 plus x is greater than 8, because 15 is already greater than 8. if we solved this and subtracted 15 from both sides, it would tell us that x is greater than -7. Well, yes, we're talking about lengths of a triangle. The distance has to be greater than 0. This doesn't tell us anything. So these two are the key points to it. Now for the first one here, well, we can do 8 plus 15, which is 23 is greater than x. X has to be smaller than 23. Because if x is equal to 23 or greater, well, those two side lengths do not add together to be greater than the third side. For the other one here, well, we're going to subtract 8 from both sides, which will tell us that x is greater than 7. Which means that 7 is less than x is less than 'cause x is bigger than 7 but is smaller than 23. So the third side has to be between 7 and 23. Any other questions on 37? Do we want to look at 38 or 39? Let's look at 40 through 42. Which one of these do you all want to look at? 41. So any two side lengths, if it is a triangle, any two side lengths have to add together and be greater than the third. So we can just start off with 6.5 plus 8.9 is going to be greater than 2.4. So if we add them together, 6.5 plus 8.9 is going to give us 15.4. Is 15.4 greater than 2.4? Now this works for any combination, so we could say 6.5 plus 2.4 is greater than 8.9. Here, 6 plus 5.5 plus 2.4 is going to be 8.9, and is 8.9 greater than 8.9? No. So this here would not be a triangle. So this is no. Because if one of these three fail, if one of the setups where two of the sides added together is not bigger than the third, then it's not a triangle. Any other questions on 40 or 42? And that is it. So your test is tomorrow. You do need to get all the assignments done and turned in this week. Yep. Anything not turned in by the end of the day Friday will be a 0. Okay.